What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and over the last couple of weeks, I've been going through my fantasy football positional rankings, my top 24 running backs and wide receivers, top 12 quarterbacks and tight ends. Today, we're going to be combining all of those positions into my top 36 overall player rankings. Now, this isn't going to be as much like individual player breakdowns as it is going to be talking about like the overall strategy of how these positions, go together, why I take a running back here, a wide receiver here, where would I take the tight ends, the quarterbacks, just talking about how all the positions mix together. But would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know who you think should be higher, who should be lower. If you enjoy the video, hit the like button and subscribe. But let's dive right into tier one here. And I only have one guy in my tier one. As it stands today, I think Ja'Marr Chase should be the clear 101. He was the highest scoring non-quarterback last year at 23.7 PPR points per game. I think when you're comparing him to the rest of the wide receivers at the position, I just don't think you can make a case for another wideout over Ja'Marr Chase. He was just the wide receiver one. He's in a very similar offensive situation. Joe Burrow at quarterback. Defense is probably still going to be rough. We know he's one of the most talented wide receivers in the league. So he's my clear wide receiver one. And then when you compare him to the running backs, he did just prove he can outproduce all those guys. And although last year, wide receiver got hit kind of hard with injuries and running backs, stayed relatively safe, I still think wide receivers just have way less injury risk. So Ja'Marr Chase would be my clear 101 at this point. Now, moving into tier two, we have three running backs, three wide receivers. So 102 through 104, I have Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, and Jahmyr Gibbs. 105 through 107, I have CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, and Puka Nacua. So I think all three of these running backs have proven they have 20-plus point per game upside. Saquon, obviously going to be super efficient, have a lot of touchdown upside on the Eagles offense. Bijan, just an overall workhorse. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get it done through efficiency and touchdowns here with the Lions. Then is also just a great receiving back. And so I do slightly lean towards these guys over the wide receivers. I do think they have a higher overall kind of floor ceiling. So I feel very confident these guys could be 20-plus point per game guys. For the wide receivers, I still think they're going to be flirting with that, but I just don't feel quite as confident. So that's why I have Lamb, Jefferson, Puka, I guess kind of like a mini tier behind those three running backs. I do think they all have 20-plus point per game upside. Like CeeDee Lamb coming off an underwhelming 2024, but in 2023, he showed off that ceiling. Jefferson's hit that. It's just like rookie quarterback. Is McCarthy going to bring more to the table, just like passing volume wise, than Sam Darnold did last year? And then Puka, I'm actually probably going to be higher on than consensus. I do think he firmly belongs in this tier. He would have been a 20-plus point per game guy if you just count his healthy games last year, the one where he left early, and then the one where he was ejected before halftime. Without hitting in the touchdown department, he was still producing up there with those other wideouts. I know you do bring in Devontae Adams as target competition, but I think these guys all belong here in tier two. And I think you could make the case hypothetically for any of these dudes as high as the second overall pick. Now, moving into tier three, we're getting into later round one, start round two area. I have Ashton Genty, Nico Collins, Christian McCaffrey, Malik Neighbors, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brock Bowers, and Brian Thomas Jr. So for Genty, I know some people aren't going to like this. Rookie, we've never seen him play in the NFL. How can you draft him this high? I just think he's a guy who has workhorse running back potential from day one. You're not going to draft a running back as early as the Raiders did and have him in some sort of weird committee with a Raheem Mostert. I guess maybe you could if you're the Falcons and you have Bijan splitting 50-50 or 55-45 with Algier, but I'm still willing to bet that Genty is going to have a ton of usage. I think this offense is going to be pretty solid. Typically a running back goes this early, they're kind of thrust into just a mess offensively. I don't think that's the case here with the Raiders, so I am willing to take Genty this high. Then I have Nico Collins coming off of back-to-back 17-plus point per game seasons. I think he does have that upside to really hit a high ceiling season, get up there 20, 21 points per game. I do think that's certainly in his range of outcomes. Then for Christian McCaffrey, going to be a super polarizing player. I just think it's tough to ignore the ceiling. I know injuries have been a massive concern, and you could draft him here in the first round, and he could get hurt, be out for the season, bust, and your season is, a flop. But I'm someone who's going to be in 10 to 12 leagues. if I'm drafting 10 to 12 teams, I'm going to want Christian McCaffrey for sure on at least one of them, and I imagine I'm probably going to have him in at least a couple of leagues. I just think the upside you're getting is like a potential late round 1, early round 2 pick is too great to pass up. And all the reports we've seen so far that, he's healthy, he's fully back, like obviously things could change, but as of right now, I do think CMC is a great value, and I'd probably see myself moving him higher as opposed to, dropping him as long as we don't get any negative reporting. And then for Malik Neighbors, I think he's a really strong 1-2 turn pick. I mean, the dude was the wide receiver 6 in points per game as a rookie. I kind of have questions on what his ceiling is for this specific season. Like, I think in a different situation, he could be like a 22, 23 plus point per game guy. Like, if you just switch him out with Jamar Chase, like, I think he could potentially be the wide receiver 1 this year. It's just like this Giants offense. He was peppered with targets last year. I don't know if we're really going to see his efficiency and touchdown upside unlocked with this current team. Like, maybe Jackson Dart comes in and is super impressive, but that's definitely more of like the peak outcome for Neighbors. But I still think like even in a bad offense like he proved last year, he still can be a solid mid-tier wide receiver 1. And then I have Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he's proven to be a pretty high floor player, 18 plus points per game in back-to-back seasons. I don't really think he has the ceiling to compare with some of the dudes in tier 2, but I still think he's a nice like 1-2 turn pick. I do have like a little bit of concern here for this Lions offense. You had Ragnar retire, Ben Johnson's gone. I think there might be a little bit of slippage, but like this is still going to be a solid unit, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is still going to produce. Then I have Brock Bowers, probably higher on Bowers than consensus. I think you just look at what he did last year as a rookie at the tight end position, averaged 15.5 points per game. I have 7 wide receivers ahead of Brock Bowers. The wide receiver 7 last year averaged 17.6 points per game. I think you bring in Geno Smith, this offense is going to get better. They're going to put up more points. Like, I think Brock Bowers could put up fantasy wide receiver 1 production. And so if you're drafting him here and he's giving you 16, 17 points per game, it's possible he's producing in line or maybe even outproducing some of the wide receivers that are drafted in the same area, but you have him at that tight end designation, which is obviously super valuable. And then the last guy in this tier, Brian Thomas Jr., he was a wide receiver 1 as a rookie, had a late season breakout, even without Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. I think Liam Cohen's going to come in. I think he's going to unlock this offense, and I think we're going to see a big year 2 out of Brian Thomas Jr. Now, moving into tier 4, we're going to have Devon Achane, Trey McBride, Derrick Henry, Drake London, Ladd McConkey, T. Higgins, and A.J. Brown. For Achane, he's coming off of back-to-back 17-plus point per game seasons. I think he has the upside to like truly compete to be the running back 1 overall. When we saw him healthy as a rookie, right? He had a couple of games where he like left early or was super limited. In his healthy games, he averaged over 20 points per game. Last year, in 2 of his healthy games, he averaged over 20 points per game. Obviously, like as a smaller running back, health isn't always a given. With Tua at quarterback, health isn't always a given, but you can certainly paint a picture where Tua stays healthy, Achane stays healthy, and he's giving you 20, 21, 22 plus points per game. He was super involved as a pass catcher last year. His efficiency was crazy as a rookie. If he can somehow combine those two, like I said, I do think he could be the running back 1 overall. Then I have Trey McBride, my tight end 2 behind Brock Bowers. Last year, put up 15.6 points per game while only scoring 4 touchdowns. I think similar to Bowers, I don't think his ceiling is quite as high. I just think Bowers is the better overall player. But I do think he, like, in a boom season, could be producing, like, back-end wide receiver 1 production, which in this range, I'm totally fine drafting him here. Then for Derrick Henry, he was the running back 4 in points per game last year. I guess age just doesn't matter for him. He just keeps on chugging. I would still say he has a little bit more risk than some of these other dudes going around him, just as like an aging running back with the workloads he's had. But I've been saying that the past few years, and it just straight up has not mattered. Then I have Drake London. As I'm honestly recording this right now, I think I'm going to flip Ladd McConkey and Drake London. I think I'm going to have Ladd ahead of Drake here. For Ladd, 18.7 points per game in the last 6 games of the season. That would have been the wide receiver 4 on the year. I think you could see a year 2 jump. I think this team could be a little bit more pass heavy this season. They brought in Trey Harris. Ladd McConkey is going to be more of a force in year 2. I think they just didn't really trust the weapons they had last year, and probably rightfully so, because there just wasn't a lot going on behind Ladd. And then for Drake London, he's proven he can give you like that fringe wide receiver one production. Can he take another leap this season and, break into that really strong wide receiver one to like mid-tier wide receiver one upside? But like I will say, last year, he averaged within 1 point per game of both Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. And so if I'm getting similar production out of the tight end position, I'm going to take those tight ends. And then I think compared to Ladd, like the big reason why I'm flipping them, I do think Ladd could be better this year, but I also just know what I'm getting out of Justin Herbert, and I know he can support these strong fantasy wide receivers. For Drake London, there is still some uncertainty with Michael Penix, and I know he looked pretty solid in that 3-game stretch last year, but it's a small sample size. We don't know what he's going to look like over a full season. And then the last two guys here, T. Higgins and A.J. Brown, both guys with kind of cap ceilings. I think they can both peak as like mid-tier wide receiver ones, but it's tough to see them having like that top 3 upside at the position. Then in tier 5, we're going to go with Jonathan Taylor, Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, Josh Jacobs, just running through some running backs here. With Jonathan Taylor, you just know you're getting really, really strong rushing production. I originally was thinking like his upside could be capped with Anthony Richardson, vulturing near the goal line, not a ton of receiving usage. I think at this point, we probably have to lean towards Daniel Jones, like being the week 1 starter. Like personally, I feel like they should really give Anthony Richardson like every opportunity to win this job. He's the dude who could like hypothetically be the long-term answer. Like I don't think Daniel Jones really has any upside to be a plus quarterback in the NFL. It just would have happened at this point. But like the word out of Colts camp is that this has been a legit competition. They want to go with the more consistent guy. And now Anthony Richardson is dealing with some sort of shoulder injury. So it really seems like the runway is there for Daniel Jones. And I think from a fantasy perspective, that's probably an upgrade for Jonathan Taylor. You could see him hitting one of those boom touchdown seasons like he did in, was it 2021 or 2022? I think he scored like 20 total touchdowns. And that's really where Jonathan Taylor is going to find that ceiling. Like if he's going to be a 20 plus point per game guy, he's going to need to hit in the touchdown department. He's going to need to be super efficient on the ground. And I think with no Anthony Richardson, maybe the efficiency takes a hit, but I think the touchdown upside more than makes up for it. Then with Bucky Irving, last 7 games of the season, 18.3 points per game. This is a dude who put up 1,500 yards, over 1,500 yards, with a sub 50% snap share and opportunity share. That is absolutely insane. Like to have that type of production without like this monster workload is just, very rare at the running back position. I think obviously he's going to be the clear running back one for the entire season this year. Still probably somewhat capped just in terms of his usage due to his size, but he's a great player. I like him in this range. Then for Chase Brown, averaged over 20 points per game without Zach Moss. Really kind of avoided any hits in free agency and in the NFL draft, like no legit big-time competition coming in. Have to feel good about Chase Brown. And then for Josh Jacobs, I think he's kind of capped at like that mid-tier running back one upside, but in this range, you'll certainly take that. And then the second to final tier here, we have Rashee Rice, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, JSN, Breece Hall, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, and Terry McLaurin. So one running back in here, a couple of quarterbacks, and then a bunch of wide receivers. For Rashee Rice, it's just pretty easy to see the upside. His 3 games last year, his 3 healthy games, he went 7 for 103, 5 for 75 and a touchdown, 12 for 110 and a touchdown. Reports out of Chief Camp are that he is going to be fully healthy. He's going to be good to go. And if he can do that over a full season, I mean, he's even going to be a steal at this ranking. And then for Lamar and Josh Allen, I just think we're getting into the range here where like maybe the wide receivers don't have elite like league winning upside. And so like the last 6 seasons, these two have had 5 quarterback one finishes. That's insane. They're both high upside options. I think they're fair in like the 3rd round. Then for JSN, coming off a year 2 breakout, averaged over 18 points per game in his last 9 games. I don't know if he has like the crazy upside to be a mid-tier wide receiver one or better, but I could certainly see him, squeaking into the top 12. Then I have Breece Hall, someone who I'm just like slowly getting higher and higher on. I know he's coming off a rough last season, but he's a proven 3-down workhorse. I do think he can be an efficient running back. I think Justin Fields, the threat of his legs out of the backfield, are going to open some things up for Breece Hall. And I know there were the trade rumors, all of that stuff, but at this point, like, Seems like they're good with him being their running back 1. And if I can get him mid-round 3, it's kind of funny. I remember when he was coming off the torn ACL, I was all over him in the middle of the 3rd round. That obviously ended up paying off. I was also in on him last year. It did not. But like mid-round 3 again for a player I like, I think it's a very reasonable price tag. Then I have Tyreek Hill, high risk, high reward, coming off a down season, and it's easy to kind of explain the issues. He had a wrist injury. Tua was in and out of the lineup. But it's also like with these aging wide receivers, if you just like, you can make a lot of excuses for them, whether it's injuries, things going on around them. But more often than not, if you just kind of like fade them the next year after they, show some chinks in the armor, you're going to win more often than not. So I'd consider moving him down lower, but like I also have him in the range with some other veteran wide receivers like Mike Evans, like Devontae Adams. Evans here has been the wide receiver 10 in points per game in 3 out of 4 seasons, but he's going to be 32 years old. Same thing with Devontae Adams, goes to the Rams, was the wide receiver 9 last year, but getting up there in age, probably going to be the wide receiver 2 behind Puka Nacua. And then we have Terry McLaurin dealing with some contract stuff right now. Was the wide receiver 13 last season. I know this is going to be low for some people, but the dude really hitting the touchdown department. I don't know if we're going to see a huge leap in his target share, his overall receiving yards. I think it's more likely he's going to come back down to earth for touchdowns and be in like the mid-tier wide receiver 2 area, which is why I have him as my wide receiver 18. And then this last tier, this was tough because this is going to be the start of a much larger tier. I ended up going with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Amarion Hampton. Like I said, you could check my running back video, my wide receiver video to see some of the other guys in this range. Like for Hampton, I've got James Cook, Kyron Williams, Joe Mixon, RJ Harvey, Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard, Kamara, like all in the same running back tier. So kind of like just pick your dude here. And then for Marvin Harrison Jr., disappointing year 1. I am expecting a year 1 leap. Maybe not quite as optimistic as some other people, but I do think he can get better. And then for Hampton here, like he gets the dream landing spot to the Chargers. I know early on it might be gross and like you could certainly see like a James Cook, a Joe Mixon, guys like that, like outproducing him early on. Najee's been a volume sponge, but once Hampton starts to break away, it could be a situation where we're talking about like his first 8 weeks compared to his last 9, and maybe he's like a 11, 12 points per game the first half of the season. And then the second half, when you really need him, the playoffs, the championship, I think that's where he could be a dude who's giving you, 17, 18 plus points per game. But that is going to wrap it up for my top 36. Let me hear your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.